So and you told me that you asked yourself, why am I waiting? Like, what am I waiting for, right? Because why don't you just and that kind of just had you just prompted you to just start. Is there anything that helped you make that switch to go from, well, it's a fun thing, it's a hobby, or I just love to go to movies versus I'm gonna go do this thing, where it becomes an action versus just thoughts, right?
And I always wanted to make movies, but I then just believed I either had to retire early or go to film school for a couple of years in order to be able to even try to do those sort of things. I mean, once you realize, because when I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh, all these assumptions I had were not necessarily true, like needing to go to a 2-year film school sort of thing in order to even kind of start. Once I realized those things weren't true and that I had things available, I got really excited, because then it was like this whole new world was available to me that I didn't realize before. And so, like when you get to something new and you're like in that really excited phase, like to do stuff. And so I did not only Scary Cow, but one of the Scary Cow members, Dan, introduced me to local cable access studio. And so I ended up volunteering there, like several nights a week, and learning the TV studio system of like 3 cameras, like fixed grid lighting, and lavalier mics and stuff like that. So it was like sort of complementary to the filmmaking stuff of video, and I was like learning a lot there, and it was just a lot of fun, and meeting people and stuff. So I was just assuming on both sides, because just like it's the flow thing, like we were saying before. Like once you get into that flow, it's a little bit addictive, and because you're learning stuff, becoming better, being able to do more things, that makes you, makes them more fun, and you do more things. And so I was just kind of writing that for like 2 years, I think, just building up skills, learning things, and just learning more,
So it sounds to me the key was examining the assumptions, right? Where do these assumptions come from?
I mean, I feel like a lot of them come from, you're supposed to go to school and then go to college and like kind of pick your profession and do this. So we have it all set up where it's based on, you need to go to, like a university or a school to learn that specific trade or, area and focus, and then do it. So for me, at least, especially since, academics were an important part to our family, like that was part of just how I thought things worked. Like you needed to do this school, these classes before you could do, something else. But I think as I grew up and had, difficulties in schools and also ended up learning a lot of things outside of school, I realized that wasn't necessarily true. But I still had that bias, even later on, many years later. And then when I re-examined it, I realized that must not be true. There must be other things that do exist out there that can help me without having to like quit my job or retire early to do it. It's like there must be things in the here and now that I can do.
Was it scary for you or difficult for you to trash those assumptions?
I don't think it was scary for me to trash those assumptions, because for me that was exciting, right? It was like this whole new world that was open to me. But what was scary, I think, was going into something that you really haven't done before at all.
Mm-hmm.
And, to see if you could do it. And I think one of the things I've learned through that process is, even if you haven't done it at all before,
mm-hmm.
If you just keep doing it over and over again, eventually it feels more normal. Like you get used to it. So then it feels like it's part of you. But like the first, several months when you're doing it, because by that time when you're 20 something, you've already mastered certain areas. So you're confident in doing that. Like you're like, how to do that. But then someone throws something completely you haven't done before. You're like, I don't know if I can be competent at that. Like I can't be that good at it. And so you feel, at least for me, I felt awkward doing it for several months, because it's like, I mean, am I going to be able to get the hang of it? That sort of thing. But at some point that phase passed, and then it's like, oh, I've been doing this long enough where it's like, I can do it, number one. Number two, it's like, I might actually have a talent at it, and then better at it, the more you do it, So like lighting is another example of that. Like, I don't consider myself a gaffer at all, but and before doing any of it, I would have thought, oh my God, I would be horrible at it. But by working at the cable access studio, and sort of having to do it and do it every week, you know, for all these different shows, I learned a lot about it. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean I am going to be a gaffer. I still am not, you know, nearly sort of the level of like real gaffers and lighting people, but I know enough now that I could get by if I needed to, or at least I understand the basics. So I also, like, you know, would have a better idea of how to talk to gaffers. And I think that's important too. So I'm like the best in that field. You can still, that doesn't prevent you from learning it or being at least, you know, competent in it. Because I may never be like the best gaffer, but like that doesn't mean I can't do it at all. I mean, I can do it. It sounds weird to say, but you may not think you can do it, but you can. If you work hard enough, you can do it.
So it's like, tell me, it sounds like there's the idea of not trying to be a perfect perfectionist type of, it has to be absolutely 100% right? It's like being willing to be like, I'm going to be good enough, I'm going to be competent, but I don't have to be the best at something.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want to be the best.
Okay.
But, you know, sometimes, I mean, I think a lot of times, if this wasn't my niche, if this wasn't my specialty, I couldn't be even good at it, right? Like I just wouldn't be able to do it at all. But this in-between level of like, if you work hard enough at it, you can at least learn it and do it at like a reasonable level. That doesn't necessarily mean like, you know, I can become the best at it, but I can still at least be able to do it, you know?